Alright, so this is going to be the final one for the state versus the federal government. The powers that are distributed between the two. I want to talk about the how homosexual marriage is involved in it, and then I want to get to Shay's rebellion. I was talking about the whiskey rebellion, but I meant Shay's rebellion. Okay, so all right, gay marriage in Kentucky, it was made illegal in 2004 by 75% of the people. They had voted on it. 55% still oppose it. John G. Hayburn II had actually knocked it down because of the Equal Protection Clause under the 14th Amendment, and the Attorney General says that he wasn't going to enforce any of the discriminating laws. 13 states allow homosexual marriage. So because of John G. Hayburn II, a federal judge who was appointed by Bush Quayle in Louisville, Kentucky, he had knocked it down because of the Equal Protection Clause. But the specifics of it is that Kentucky now recognizes marriages that had happened in other states, but not marriages that happened in this state. So if you're a gay person in Kentucky, go to Massachusetts, get married, come back, and then Kentucky will have to recognize your marriage as being proper. I think that they should use the full faith and credit of the United States. The full faith and credit clause of the U.S. Constitution says that every state has to recognize other states' public records, and court proceedings and some other things, but basically the public records. So if you're married in one state, then you're married in another state. If you have a driver's license in one state, you have a driver's license in another state. That's the full faith and credit, I think, full faith and credit of the clause. Let me make sure I get this right. It's the full faith and credit clause. Okay, each state must honor each other's state's public acts and record and court proceedings. So they have their public acts, the records, and the court proceedings. I think specifically, it's hard to actually say that, well, one law is passed here, so therefore you got to pass. You can't say the laws, but I think the records are a good one, and it's a better fight. So if Kentucky wants to make gay marriage legal, they need to use the full faith and credit clause. And the full faith and credit clause is Article 4, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution. So that's what we're looking at right now. I wanted to actually go through a little bit of the history of Kentucky and LGBT rights, because it's a fascinating thing. So in 1992, the Kentucky Supreme Court ruled the section of Kentucky sodomy statute criminalizing consensual sodomy violated the Kentucky State Constitution. So they overturned consensual sodomy statute KRS 510.100 in Kentucky v. Wasson case. Kentucky Supreme Court decriminalized consensual sodomy. Consensual sodomy, that was between gay people, so between man and woman and woman. Since 1974, what they had passed a law that had said that if you're a man and a woman, they couldn't do three types of sodomy. And the three types of sodomy was, let's see, genital oral, so blowjobs, right? Oral sex. Genital anal, so no anal sex, and anal oral. Rimming, so that you couldn't have no rim jobs, no blow jobs, and no anal sex. That's constituted. That was in Kentucky law. Okay, so that's what they had passed in 1974. Go before then, it was actually more lax. Okay, so 1974 was actually sort of a watershed for homophobia, because in 1860 there was a sodomy statute that had criminalized anal penetration by a penis, and that applied to both male-female couples and male-male couples. So in 1860, Kentucky had a law that said that no anal sex, right? So period. No anal sex could happen between two men. No anal sex could happen between a man and a woman. That was 1860. Fast forward to 1974, right? So 114 years later, then they changed it. It wasn't just anal sex that they were against between both female and male couples and male-male couples, but now they were against just homosexuals, and they were against anal sex, rimming, and oral sex. Okay, so that's Kentucky law. Then in 1992, they struck it down, and they said that it was unconstitutional. Then the Supreme Court in 2003 also had said that it violated the Constitution too. So they had overturned the remaining state sodomy laws. So that's pretty fascinating, I think. The 1860 sodomy statute criminalized anal penetration. There was actually the Commonwealth versus Poindexter, involved two African American men who were arrested for consensual oral sex, but they had they didn't get in trouble. They were not convicted of any crime because they said that only anal sex was illegal, but blowjobs were allowed. Consensual oral sex was allowed. So 1860, there's actually more freedom for gay folks than what there was in 1974. Okay, so 1975, it used to be a felony. Okay, it used to be a felony if you had anal sex with if you had anal sex or oral genital or oral anal or anal genital with same-sex couples, then that was a felony, but then they changed it a year afterwards and they dropped it down to a misdemeanor. The former Kentucky statute criminalized, right, the three genital sex, anal, oral, and genital oral, but only partners of the same sex, and such sexual activities between mixed sex such sexual activities between mixed sex male-female couples were legal. So male-female couples were allowed to do whatever type of sex that they wanted to, but gay people were not allowed to. Such conduct, if that was caught to have sodomy, right, if they had gay couples who was doing anal oral, genital anal, or genital oral, that was a misdemeanor that was punishable by up to 12 months in jail and a fine of up to $500, right? Solicitation of same was also a misdemeanor, punishable by up to 90 days in jail and a fine up to $250. So just asking for somebody or just trying to get that type of sex could land you in jail. If they could convict you of actually doing it, they could throw you in jail for 12 months. So if you got a blowjob in Kentucky after 1974, they could have put you in jail for 12 months. If you got if you did any type of gay stuff, any type of gay sex at all, you would be in jail for 12 months. Okay, so we've advanced, right? In 1860, we were at some spot, then we kind of went backwards in 1974, really far backwards, right? Then 1992, they had dropped it down, and now 2004, we had passed the amendment saying that it was illegal, you couldn't be gay in Kentucky, but then recently, because of John G. Hayburn II, now it is legal. So that's sort of the background of what's going on. It's so ridiculous. Two consenting adults should be allowed to do whatever they want to do in the privacy of their own homes. The distinctions, I mean, it's disgusting just to be able to say all these different things. This is allowed, this isn't allowed. In 1860, right, anal penetration was illegal, even by a man and a woman. So, even if you're with your wife, you couldn't, have anal sex, which I'm not a fan of it either way, but people should be allowed to do it. And actually, I've heard a lot of men say, well, just try it. You'll love it, right? If you just try it once, you'll love it. So, yeah, that's what we're faced with right now in Kentucky. The Shay's Rebellion, okay? So I want to talk about Shay's Rebellion. I mentioned the Risky Rebellion, but that was after the Constitution had been passed. Shay's Rebellion happened in 1786, right after the Revolution had been won, supposedly. So 1781, that was when the Battle of Yorktown had happened. 1783 was the Treaty of Paris. And depending on which one you say, the end of the military conflict happened in 1781, but then the treaty was actually passed in 1783. When did the revolution end? Either 1781, 1783. 1786 is when Shay's Rebellion had happened. So if there's a rebellion, basically a rebellion means it's a failed uprising, a failed war, a failed revolution. It's because you got Shay's Rebellion, Whiskey Rebellion, Bacon's Rebellion. That was in 1690 when you had both black and white who were fighting together because they kept on getting murdered by the Indians and the British government wasn't doing anything to protect them. So Bacon's Rebellion had burned down Jamestown and the capital of Virginia, which is sort of Kentucky's capital actually had been burnt down 4 times too. So, burning the capital was like a big thing back in the day. But and then there's Nat Turner's rebellion, which happens later on. But all of them had lost. Bacon's rebellion, you saw 23 of the rebellious people who were hung. Nat Turner's rebellion, they'd all been murdered. Whiskey Rebellion, that was George Washington smashing it down. I don't know if nobody was killed in the Whiskey Rebellion, because after George Washington had got 13,000 militia strong, the people had dispersed, so they didn't want to die there. Shay's rebellion is absolutely extraordinary because of what had happened. You had Sam Adams, who employs the Riot Act, right? So Sam Adams, which is like the father of the American Revolution, he passes the Riot Act, and he wanted to jail anybody without trial. So he wanted to infringe upon people's habeas corpus. Then you had Alexander Hamilton, who said, well, let's get rid of democracy. I'm tired of democracy. People say that the will of the people is like God's voice. If that's what the people want, then that's like God himself is actually speaking. But Alexander Hamilton says, no, that's not true. We need a permanent aristocracy. So he actually goes against, democracy, and says we need a permanent aristocracy. So Howard Zinn is the one who pointed this out. He had said that so during Shay's rebellion, western Massachusetts farmers rose up because they couldn't afford high taxes and were losing their farms. Howard Zinn, Captain Daniel Shay, a veteran of the Revolution, gave his name to the rebellion, but it was a rebellion of thousands and thousands. They surrounded the courthouses, wouldn't allow the farms and land to be auctioned off. No, you're not going to auction off our farms. We learned that from history because people are being foreclosed or losing their homes instead of waiting for the president and Congress to act, who are very slow to act and who are not going to really represent the interests of these poor people or even middle class people who are evicted from homes. People should be organized and doing what citizens have done, doing what democracy requires to prevent these evictions from taking place. Long before the cries of support to troops became commonplace during every U.S. military intervention, the powers that be made it clear how much they intended to follow their own advice. When Massachusetts passed a state constitution in 1780, it found few friends among the poor and middle class, many of them veterans from the Continental Army, still waiting for the promised bonuses. No one could hold state office without being quite wealthy. They had excessive property taxes, and that was combined with poll taxes to prevent the poor from even voting. Furthermore, the legislature was refusing to issue paper money, as had been done in Rhode Island, to make it easier for debt-ridden farmers to pay off their creditors. Shay's rebellion is important because with the Constitution versus the state power, because we had the Articles of Confederation, which says that 13 colonies were 13 individual countries, and you had a loose conglomeration that was called the United States. It was the Articles of Confederation. They said it wasn't strong enough because of Shay's rebellion. Shay's rebellion came out of nowhere, and they were sort of, basically fighting for the ideals of the revolution after the revolution had been called off. So this is important. This is where you'll get actually Thomas Jefferson's quote about how we need a little revolution or a little rebellion every 20 years or so, how that's a good thing for the health of a democracy. He was in France at the time, which really made a lot of the aristocrats mad, back home. And he also said that, not only was a little revolution good, but he said that sometimes the revolution needs to something about the blood of patriots, and something about every once in a while you have to have the blood of patriots. That was sort of, the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. It is its natural manure. So the tree of liberty needs tyrants and patriots to die in order for it to carry on. So that's amazing. So he's supporting Shay's rebellion. Shay was, there are all these American revolutionaries who were in favor and had solidarity with Shay. When he was marching to the courthouse, people just kept piling into the ranks, and it was against the aristocracy. So basically, it was the 99% versus the 1%. And instead of allowing these people to get their houses and their land and their, everything being foreclosed, they actually would confront the sheriffs and the powers that be at the courthouses, and the sheriffs and some of the powers that be would call out the militia. The militia would get there, and then the militia would actually side with the colonists. So Shay's rebellion had actually changed the Articles of Confederation to the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution was a strong central government. We're supposed to think that that's actually a good thing, but it's not that good of a thing. I mean, a strong central government, that's what we were fighting against, right? The tyranny of the whole thing. Then Lincoln, consolidates it all, and then the federal government has, like, all the control in the world. So that's how we got the U.S. Constitution, because of Shay's rebellion. Now, we need to actually get rid of this horrible myth that the founding fathers were good people. They were not. They were horrible, horrible people. And it's absolutely true. They were racist, misogynist, classic, unapologetic exploiters of the common person. Almost all were rich elites. The majority were land speculators. They were heavily interested in businesses and corporations, deeply invested in defined popular interests. Many were active in propagating the worst genocide in all of human history, the genocide of the Native Americans, which totals over 100 million total, right? And 19 out of 20 of those who had lived on the continent before the arrival of the Europeans. So this is the Shays Rebellion actually was fighting for the revolution, but